Our next speaker is Paul Strong. He's a geologist with 40 years of oil and gas experience and is currently the Chief Petroleum Geologist in the Basin Prospectivity Team of the GSSA at DEM. He's had a range of senior technical and managerial positions, especially with Santos in the last 23 years. So please join me in welcoming Paul.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, hopefully you can hear me okay. Okay, so let's just get started. So I'm just going to talk about play mapping workflow. There's been a little bit of discussion about play mapping in some of the presentations so far today, and I'm just going to briefly go through that, but then I'm going to use an example from the onshore Otway that follows on from some of the work that Sharon was just talking about. So there's the disclaimer, and this is Sharon's first slide, which I've just added on. We've added on a couple of things in here, so the road trough up in here, the Panola trough where most of the production has occurred so far from the Otway Basin, and the Tantanoola trough. So this is the results from the petroleum systems model that was conducted by the department in 2023, and everything, all the results of that have gone up on the website. And as Sharon had mentioned, you know, we wanted to stimulate the next phase of exploration in the onshore Otway Basin, and you can see that there are a couple of licenses showing up on here that are currently in place, but there's some acreage up in here that is currently not licensed, and we're hoping to put out some of this acreage in the acreage release that's going to come out in the first quarter next year. So what I'm briefly going to talk about is I'm just going to go through an overview of the play-based exploration process, and then talk about the Otway Basin plays that we reviewed, and then I'm going to talk about the Pretty Hill sandstone. Sorry, I just realised that maybe I need to raise this up a bit. So if I go to the next slide, I've just nicked Sharon's slide here, but what I have done, so this is obviously, oh, my apologies, wrong one. This is obviously in the core library that we've heard a bit about today, and this is a different picture to what Sharon was showing. This is Tim Rady, who worked with Sharon and Rob Kirk and Chris Cubitt last year on pulling a lot of this work together, and this is one of the seismic lines that shows here a canyon within the Pretty Hill sandstone that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. So first of all, this is the overview of the play-based exploration, and it's showing an exploration pyramid which was put together by Royal Dutch Shell in 2014, and it's going from the base down in here where you've got very wide-scale geological interpretation, looking at plate settings and regional maps. And then you go into basins where there might be, and looking at petroleum systems and sequence stratigraphy. I'm going to concentrate on this play focus through here, where you're looking at play and basin evaluation. And then as you go up to the top here, you go through interpreting the information to come up with prospects, which might then lead on to drilling, and obviously looking at potential resources that there may be. Play-based exploration is really an understanding of petroleum system in a basin, and identification, mapping and quantifying a play so that you then effectively, with all the elements put together, you come up with an identification of the sweet spot that you're hoping that you might be getting after and going to drill and find some oil and gas. One very important point here, though, is that this is not static. And it's very easy to do some work and you think that's the answer. Well, some models are useful, some of them are very much not useful, but you need to keep on feeding back into the model any more information or interpretation that you come up with, whether it's new drilling or seismic or just some new ideas. So my second slide on the overview is just to give you an idea again from the Royal Dutch Shell of some of the maps that we might need to put into this. And really you're looking at reservoir, extent and reservoir intervals, like similar to what Sharon's just been talking about in the Otway, and then hydrocarbon charge. So for any oil and gas accumulation, you need to have a source rock that has got sufficient organic material in it to then be matured and expelled from the source rock and into a reservoir rock. So we need to map these out. And then, of course, you need to be able to trap the oil and gas within a reservoir. And so we need some sealing intervals in there in order to be able to come up with an accumulation. So that's really just a brief overview of what the play-based exploration is all about. And so I'm going to go into some detail now talking about the play mapping work that's been conducted this year, following on from the petroleum systems model that was conducted by DEM last year. Same slide that Sharon had up. This is the stratigraphy within the Otway Basin, which has now been published by Rob Kirk, as Sharon just mentioned. And you've got a series of formations in here. What I've done is I've highlighted the plays that we've reviewed. So we've actually got 7 depositional systems through here. And for completeness sake, I just had a quick look at the fractured basement because there have actually been some gas shows within the fractured basement in the onshore Otway. The source rocks that were modelled in the study last year are all shown up in purple there through the section. So we've got the Casterton up through the lower saw pit, the upper saw pit, and then into the Lera. And the example that I'm going to use here is the Pretty Hill sandstone, which, as Sharon has said, has produced 68 BCF, but it's also produced nearly 500,000 barrels of oil. And we're looking for gas at the moment. Gas is very important, as Chris has mentioned and Sharon's also talked about, but there will be some oil that will be found as well. So core to seismic, Sharon's already talked a little bit about this. I've just got a couple of examples. So this was from the study that was done last year, and we're looking at a core here from Katnook 1, which is in the Penola Trough, just in here. And this is from nearly 3,000 metres of depth, and you can see that there's a decent sandstone in there, which has been interpreted to be on a floodplain within the Penola Trough, deposited within the Penola Trough. And then taking it to the seismic. So location of Katnook 1, this is the seismic data, A to A prime there. Location of Katnook in here, and this is the channel system that has been interpreted from that core and integrated in with the seismic. Got a second example, again from the Katnook 2 core. This is deeper down in the section. This is the interbedded, primarily shale clay, stone, mudstone, with some thinly laminated sands within there. And this has been, I'm not sure whether you'll be able to read this because it's obviously fairly small font, but this is part of the delta front through in here, which is primarily through with going into the lake. And as the progradation occurs, you get up into the channel belt system that I just showed on the previous slide. And there's a seismic, but it's an example coming from the western side in the Rogue Trough, showing the delta plane there, and this is a seismic line again from the work that Rob Kirk did last year. Slightly different area. So previously I was talking, just showed you a couple of seismic lines, one from down here in the Penola Trough and one over here in the Rogue Trough. This is up to the north, and this is the same seismic line that was on the slide earlier on with the core as well. This is showing you a canyon cut. There's a couple of canyon cuts showing up on the left-hand side in this seismic. So this is showing you the deeper section down in here and the higher interval in there with the canyon cutting down in through there. This is from the 2023 work that was done primarily by Chris. This is his first working interpretation of the gross depositional map of the Pretty Hill sandstone. So what we've got on here is the thickness map for the Pretty Hill sandstone. This area in here in pale orange and up to the north is where we interpreted elevated areas where there was no deposition. The Isopach thickness map in the centre here, the thinner areas are in orange and yellow, with the thicker areas in blues and purples, showing you that there's quite a thick section within the road trough through there. And this is the Panola Trough in here. On the right-hand side is Chris's 3D diagram of that, just showing you, again, this is the canyon up in here and deposition of the Brady Channel Belt system through the Panola Trough. That was the first pass. That was then drafted up, and the central part of this was published by Chris in collaboration with his other authors, Sharon, Rob Kirk and Tim Rady, earlier on this year. This is showing you the what I've called now the first pass, because when I was doing the play analysis work, what I had a look at some of the area up in the road trough up in here, and there are some sands that come through within the Pretty Hill sandstone through in here. So this is what we've called the final gross depositional environment map. Now what I'm going to do, oh sorry, I should have pointed out that production through here in these fields down in there, I mentioned 500,000 barrels of oil's been produced in here, primarily from 4 fields there. We've got Redmond, Catnook, Ladbroke Grove and Hazel Grove. Now what I'm going to do is just leave that map up on the right hand side and talk about the play elements of the Pretty Hill sandstone. Same map on the right. On the left hand side we've got the stratigraphy, and obviously showing you the Pretty Hill sandstone in the centre here, and this is the outline of where we think the reservoir is going to be primarily present. But you've got to remember that it's all based on the seismic data as well as the well data, and the interpretation is only as good as the data that you have. Please don't forget that, and of course new data, you can iterate again and come up with a new interpretation. So there's your reservoir. The next element that we're looking at is the seal, and stratigraphically you would expect that the formation above might provide a good seal. Well, certainly some of the sealing intervals here in the lacustrine shales of the Lara formation would be a good seal for any sands you've got in the Pretty Hill. The Lara formation is present only from this area here down to the south. So for the Pretty Hill, it's only going to act as a good seal in this area here. North of that line, we start looking at another seal above, and we're looking primarily at floodplain shales of the Umarella formation. But we've got, in this blue area in here, there is Windermere sandstone present, and it's also got some oil and gas shows in it. An oil show here in Nungamaya, and there's also a gas flow, which was too small to measure, in this well here, just right there. So in the northern area, the Umarella is going to act as a good seal in the area that's hatched in here, but further work would need to be done to look to see quite what the distribution is like within the of the Windermere sandstone, whether it's going to act as a good source rock or not, a seal I mean. And if it's not going to act as a good seal, then the chances are that you'll be looking for oil and gas within the Windermere sandstone, not the Pretty Hill. If I go to the next slide, this is showing you where the source rocks below the Pretty Hill sandstone are the Upper Sawpit Shale, the Lower Sawpit Shale, and also the Casterton Formation, where they have been modelled in the 2023 modelling package to have been mature for oil and gas generation, and then have expelled oil and gas out of the source rocks and up into potentially into the Pretty Hill sandstone above. So those are the 3 elements. The next map is a bit of a mess, but basically what you want to do is put all 3 elements together to try and come up with the sweet spots that I talked about earlier on. And that there is the interpreted Pretty Hill sandstone play map. And with the legend, there's obviously quite a few different things going on in here, but essentially the areas that we need to be concentrating on are the areas in green, where we've got the Pretty Hill sandstone braided and alluvial anastomosing sands down in here, but there are also some alluvial fans that have been interpreted. So the green is expected to be where the reservoir might be charged and sealed. The orange is where there may not be any direct migration into the reservoir, so longer range charge is needed, and the blue areas that I've already pointed out are where seal needs to be better characterised. So that's the summary of the talk that I've just given you. The primary reason for doing it is to try to identify sweet spots to go after, to go and drill for oil and gas. But you've got to remember it's not static, it's got to be iterative in the process. And just to summarise, we've got 7 depositional intervals as well as the fractured basement that the play analysis was conducted on in the first half of this year, hopefully to stimulate the next phase of exploration in the basin. All of this data is up on the ERD website, the Energy Resources website for the model. So this is, if you go to the Otway Basin on the ERD website, you'll see this. Here are all the links to all the different plays, and the presentation that I've given has been written up as a paper by myself and Chris Cubitt, and that has, as of I think at the beginning of this week, that's now up on the website as well. Again, look at the rocks, look at the seismic, come up with your interpretation, and make sure that you try and keep the interpretation evergreen as much as you can. Thank you very much.